Hey Kev, let's follow this trail over here. This looks like there might be something waiting down there.
All right. Hey, wait a minute. Do you hear that?
Yeah, I thought it was just me. What the heck is that?
I don't know what that is. Whoa, do you smell that too?
That's unbelievable. Hey, look.
What the?
Hey, look, those branches are moving over there.
What the heck is that?
Holy cow, is that what I think it is? Look at that thing.
Oh my God.
It's a freaking Sasquatch. Welcome to the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters podcast. I am your host, W.J. Sheehan, author of the series of books Bigfoot Terror in the Woods Sightings and Encounters. 12 initial volumes, all available in paperback, ebook, and audio format at Amazon and Audible. And update on my regional series. We now have the Pacific Northwest edition ready to rock and roll in all formats. And the Southwest edition is out in paperback, Kindle, and ebook. So have at it, folks. And Kev, let me invite you in here. This is my brother and co-host, KJ Sheehan. Kev, how are you?
I'm doing all right, Bill. We had a beautiful day yesterday. It was cold as anything here in North Carolina yesterday, and today it was beautiful. So go figure.
Awesome. Yeah, we're getting a mixed bag up here. We finally
up and down, up and down.
Yeah, we got a little rain here the other day, much needed. But as we get going here tonight, I want to make a correction on something I said a couple of weeks ago. I left a note for myself, and each podcast we did, I forgot to read the note. But I had mentioned how grateful I was for some of the listeners, people who have reported, and I've gotten to know a little bit.
Wait a minute, you're not grateful?
No, I am grateful. That's not the correction.
That's not what you were going to correct.
No, I don't want to besmirch the nasty bastards. Let me just call them good people. But I mentioned that Jason was the guide at Pikes Peak, and I realized as soon as the word slipped out of my mouth that, it's not Jason, it was my buddy Jeff. So, Jeff, if you're out there, my apologies if you heard me misname you. And Jason is actually a listener to our podcast, Kev, that operates a volunteer search and rescue group in the Olympic National Forest, and has had some interesting things happen to me, to him. And he was the one that originally pointed out to me the story about the giant yerk that was found in the woods by a timber company that was preparing to cut a road into the forest. And the consequences were that after the boss saw what they found, they put a gate and I think a pile of boulders across where they were going to go, and they never exploited the area.
Now, what did they find?
Well, you may recall it was months ago. They call it a yurt.
Oh, yeah, Y-U-R-T, like a big octagonal or round tent.
That's right. But this was made out of limbs and boughs, Bigfoot style, if you get my drift.
Bigfoot style.
Yeah, and it was surrounded by carcasses of deer.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so the surveyors who were going in to begin laying out the road came across this, stopped in their tracks, and then reported it to the owner of, I guess, the property, who was going to exploit some timber. And when he saw it, I guess he just lost his mind and said, ain't nobody going in here.
I was going to say, you made that Scooby-Doo sound. Ran away.
Now, I confirmed this with some logger friends in the area who said that story was true. And they had heard of it themselves through some other, I guess, loggers quite a number of years ago. So it's in the connections over the airwaves through the books and through the Bigfoot Terror in the Woods podcast that some of the pieces can come together to form a picture. And in this case, it was probably at least several people, including Jason, who started it with me, that all came together to confirm, in fact, this really did happen. So now, people, you're going to have doubting Thomases, right, Kev? It's all bullshit. No, it's not, folks. People are seeing things. People are encountering the Bigfoot creature. And just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it's not out there. It is. So there you have it, Kev. So my apologies to both Jeff, the guide, and Jason from the search and rescue team. I love these guys. Wish they were local. We'd be good friends. But let me pass it on to you, Kev. What do you got in your cryptids in the news and other oddities tonight?
Yeah, we're going to go to the skies tonight, Bill.
Okay.
And we're going to go back in time to the summer of 1955.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, we covered some aspects of this alien encounter a long time ago.
Uh-huh.
But I came across some more information from our friends at history.com. And I was like, this one has always creeped me out. So why not return to the creep?
Yeah, well, I'm into the creep. Look at the people I hang around with.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the Hopkinsville goblins.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, there's some great artwork on this around, too. I was actually at an art fair in Wilmington, North Carolina, a couple of years ago, and I walked into this gallery, and there were some paintings of the Hopkinsville goblins. Like, I recognized them. I was like, hey, those are the Hopkinsville goblins. And the artist was like, how do you know that? He's like, yeah, I painted these from the drawing of the witnesses.
Uh-huh. Interesting,
like,
huh?
Oh, I recognize them. Oh, I recognize them.
How was the painting, by the way?
That's pretty cool. I would have bought it, but it was quite expensive.
Yeah.
Much more expensive than the typical Hopkinsville goblin painting. If there is such a thing.
I don't know. I've never seen one. Obviously, a priceless work of art.
I'll post some pictures on our website, not of the painting, but of the goblins and the sketches of the goblins and descriptions on BigfootTerrorInTheWoods.com under episode 275.
Cool.
Yeah. So this took place on August 21st, 1955. It was a one-night encounter, but a lot of people saw this, and it's pretty creepy and pretty famous.
Uh-huh.
All right, so first off, Hopkinsville is in Kentucky. It's northwest of Nashville, Tennessee, and southeast of Evansville, Indiana. But in a pretty rural place, little farm towns.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what year was this? 55, you said, Kev?
August 21st, 1955.
Yeah. Wow, that's a long time
So
ago,
you could
man.
have been cruising around in your brand new 55 Chevy Bel Air.
Not a bad choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Two-door hardtop, no post.
Oh, yeah. Four speed on the floor.
I love it.
All right. So what happened here, and this happened on a really rural house on a farm, and I mean rural like it's never been painted rural, right? Couldn't afford paint. Mm-hmm. And the family was called the Suttons, the Sutton family. And, the encounter started on their farm where the family lived in this 3-room house, didn't even have running water, a telephone, radio, TV, or books. Okay, so pretty darn rural place, even in 1955.
Yeah.
And, these people were hardworking folks and not the kind of folks that would make up a story or even the kind of folks that would go to the police in town and ask for help. And they did, in fact, go to the police and ask for help, which we'll get to in a few minutes.
Right, which is remarkable, right? A lot of these people that lived in those places in those days and times, and there are still places where
what
people...
What do we need,
Yeah, who live the same way right now. We just can't relate to it because look where we live.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome.
So here's how the account goes, and this is the account, by the way, that was given to the police.
Okay.
All right, late that night, early the next morning. So according to the police report, at about 7 p.m. on this hot Sunday evening in August 1955, one of the family friends that was hanging out with them that night, his name was Billy Ray Taylor, he was fetching water from the backyard well when he saw a silvery object in the sky, really bright, with an exhaust all the colors of the rainbow, is what the quote said.
Wow, that had to be remarkable in a dark, remote
Just in
place.
itself, right?
Yeah, right, just to see that.
Yeah, get this. It came silently toward the house, passed over it, stopped in the air, and then dropped straight to the ground.
Wow.
Right. Like over in the woods there, close to the house.
Yeah, and he's standing out there getting a bucket of water.
Getting a bucket of water.
I can't even fathom standing there and seeing this happen.
I can't either.
Incredible.
And Taylor, who was 21 years old, and his 18-year-old wife had come in from Pennsylvania to visit Lucky Sutton. Remember, it was a Sutton farm, right? With whom he had worked on a traveling carnival. So I guess they were a bit of carnies, so to speak.
Okay.
And the Suttons' 50-year-old widow and the matriarch, Glennie Langford, her 2 older sons and their wives, a brother-in-law, and the widow's 3 younger children, 12, 10, and 7, didn't take Billy Ray seriously, laughing off the UFO account. So basically, when Billy Ray Taylor comes in and he's talking about seeing this thing, they're like, come on, man, what are you talking about? Even the kids were laughing at him. Right?
You can see this going on, right? Like, come on,
Of course.
Was this some kind of goof?
He wasn't even getting a bottle of moonshine. He was getting some water from the well. So about an hour after that, so it's probably about 8 o'clock now, they hear their dogs are incessantly barking.
Wow.
And Lucky and Billy Ray, the guy who originally saw it, went to the back door and made out a strange glow. Okay? Looking out into the yard. And in the midst of the glow, they spied a small humanoid creature. So picture like this glowing orb moving at them at ground level.
Yeah.
And they see this creature that's about 3.5 feet tall. It had an oversized head, almost perfectly round. Its arms extended almost all the way to the ground. Its hands had talons, and its oversized eyes glowed with a yellowish light.
Can you imagine this thing coming towards you inside of an orb?
No.
And you're making it out like, what the hell am I looking at
What
here?
am I looking at?
And it's coming at you.
Yep.
Would you run?
Well, let's get to it here. You're going to like these guys.
No, I mean you personally. If you
Oh,
saw
me,
it,
I'd turn skedaddle and you'd hear that Scooby-Doo sound.
yeah, I mean, but go ahead.
Yeah. And they described the body of this creature as that it gave off an eerie shimmer in the light of the night's new moon. They said as if it was made of a silver metal.
Wow.
So terrified, the 2 men grabbed a 20-gauge shotgun and a .22 rifle and fired at the little man.
Well, there you have it.
And they said its hands now raised as if held up at gunpoint as it came toward the back door. They reported that it did a flip, so that's in quotes, scrambled upright and fled into the darkness.
Jeez, but obviously it didn't get killed.
No.
Wow.
So shortly after, the men saw a similar creature appear at the side window. So they went back in the house. Now they're telling everybody what they saw. And a little while later, they see something looking in the window that looks just like this other one.
Ay, 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 ay,
So they
ay.
fire through the window screen.
Oh, boy.
Still impervious to bullets, the little man again flipped and disappeared. Yeah. And Mrs. Langford says, I went out to the hallway and crouched down next to Billy when I saw one approaching the door.
Oh, boy.
It looked like a 5-gallon gasoline can with a head on top and small legs.
Oh, my
It
God.
was a shimmering bright metal like on my refrigerator.
Wow.
Is that wild or what?
It's just bizarre. I mean, and obviously the gunfire had no effect, but it had
No.
the effect it did have was to make them do this flip and move
Yeah.
away, but they kept coming back, so they weren't
coming
afraid
back.
of death.
All right, so then it gets a little worse here.
Oh, boy.
Taylor steps outside, and the house has like a little overhang on it, right? Over
Right.
the porch.
Yeah.
And those behind him, right inside the house, saw a claw-like hand reach down and touch his head. The group screamed and pulled Taylor back while Lockie shot above the overhang and then at another similar creature that was in a nearby tree.
Wow, man.
The creature in the tree floated to the ground and then scurried into the woods.
Floated to the ground.
Yeah.
You know, this is starting to remind me of one of those cartoons where they break out the shotgun, they're trying to shoot a mouse running around, they blow the whole house apart.
Yeah, they didn't report that, but yes, I could see that happening.
Well, they already shot through the screen, shooting through the roof over the porch. You know, what's next?
Yeah, well, you know, when these green men are there, throwing lead at them ain't a bad idea.
Yeah.
Unless you got your ray gun with you, which they probably didn't have in Kentucky.
Oh, my God.
So the Suttons, all of them, moved back inside and spent several hours listening for movements, hearing mostly, get this, occasional scratches on the roof.
Oh, boy.
At 11 p.m., so this is 3 hours after the original sighting, the whole group ran for the cars and hightailed it into the town of Hopkinsville to the police station at top speed.
Wow.
Because they were scared, right? And after the local police chief called for backup, his team was joined at the Sutton farm by state police, military police from nearby Fort Campbell, and a photographer from the Kentucky New Era. I guess that was a newspaper.
Okay.
There, the investigators found shell casings from the gunshots, but no other evidence. Neither could they find proof of heavy drinking, according to the Sutton matriarch. Liquor was not allowed in the farmhouse, she said.
Uh-huh.
Once the police and others left, though, the creatures returned between 2:30 a.m. and daybreak.
That is bizarre.
Yep. Get this one. Mrs. Langford said she saw one glowing repeatedly by her bedside window with its claw-like hands on the screen.
But it's like they were aware that in some capacity they were aware to stay out of sight while the larger group had come.
Hell yeah. I mean, they see all those vehicles, stuff like that, right?
Probably flashing lights.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
It does.
So,
It does.
basically in the following days, the radio stations reported on it. Newspapers, including the New York Times, reported on the incident.
Wow.
And people came from all over the nearby countryside, and states to look for the goblins.
Wow. Anything else seen after that night?
That's it.
That is in Hopkinsville.
But like 20 people saw this thing. And by the way, it was reported in to Project Blue Book. Remember Project Blue Book, right?
Yes,
The
yes,
federal
yes.
government.
Yep.
and there's a copy of the U.S. Air Force testimony written down. I have a copy of it that was given by someone in the family there. It was their name was redacted on the copy, all typed up. But it's from Charles N. Kirk, First Lieutenant, U.S. Air Force.
Incredible. And detailing the testimony about this Hopkinsville goblin.
Yeah, one of the people in the house there did the testimony for Project Blue Book.
Amazing, right?
So they thought enough of it, the federal government, to send out the Project Blue Book team.
You know, and that is a one-off to me about the description of both the creatures and their arrival, because the description of like an oil drum with small legs, a perfectly round head, and the idea of approaching in an orb coming towards them, very, very strange indeed, man.
No doubt, right?
Oh, my God, Kev. I mean, listen, man, people are going to say what they want, but if that thing was approaching you on a new moon or any moon, out there in the woods, on the roof, scratching, a hand dangling over the overhang on the porch, all looking through the windows, come on, man, you'd be freaked out.
Completely.
Yeah. You know, how do you battle something that is unknown after you fired shots on it to no avail?
Oh, no doubt about it.
You know, that's when even the guys that were shooting said, everybody in the car, let's get out of here.
100%.
You know, reinforcements. Remember Monty Python? Reinforcements. Unbelievable, Kev. The Hopkinsville, what'd they call them? Devils?
Goblins.
Goblins. Oh, my
The
God.
goblins.
Yeah, they are goblins, all right. Well,
Yeah.
I love that, man. I love that stuff.
Me too.
By the way, how much was the painting that the guy was trying to sell?
Yeah, it was like $400 back then.
Yeah, it's quite a few dollars.
Yeah. For a goblin.
Yeah, it's you're
I mean, if I was a goblin collector, then I don't even know what the market is for goblins.
yeah. What is the market for a good goblin?
Hey, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to shoot one and see what we can get for it on eBay.
Throw some lead at one.
Well, listen, bro, good job. And I've got something interesting here. If I have time, I'll break into two, but I'm not sure where we'll be with this. But this encounter was shared with me by Tracy Callahan, a resident of Maine, the good state of Maine.
It's not Harry Callahan's daughter, is it?
No, you remember him, Dirty Harry.
I do.
You gotta ask yourself, punk, do I feel lucky?
Was it 5 or was it 6? In all the excitement, I kind of lost count myself.
That's right. Remember him? He was running across the football field, I think, with his back turned to him, and he just let off that barrel, and the guy just went into a flip and dropped. I love that stuff. And this is this is what Tracy had to say. At the time of this encounter, Bill, I lived in a little town called Lily or Lily Bay, around 1982 or thereabouts. I was a freelance writer at the time, working from home, living in what most would consider relative isolation. There were very few homes and people around those parts at that time, and I would imagine it is relatively the same today. I'm
Bill,
not.
where were they? Sorry for interrupting you.
I spelled it Lily, Bay,
In what state did they say?
Maine.
Oh, Maine. Okay.
Yeah, Lily or Lily. I'm not sure how you pronounce it
I don't
with
know either.
one L.
Yeah.
But she said she doesn't live there anymore. And after what happened, she moved. So this is where we go with this.
Okay.
There were thousands of acres of wetlands, lakes, and ponds just to the west of my home, and a large lake to my north. Every type of beast and fowl imaginable resided in that area at different times of the year, and some of them year-round. At that time, I had an older Ford Econoline van that was my primary form of transportation, good on gas and able to carry whatever I needed inside. It was a window van with glass wrapping around all sides of the vehicle. One morning, I went out to get groceries. The area had a hard frost overnight. I walked out of the front door facing the van head on. The windshield was covered in ice, and I then walked around to the side driver's door to get in. The driver's window was covered in some type of frozen mucus or slime, thick and goopy looking, having frozen solid on the glass. There was some other frozen-looking paw imprints or hand imprints, something of the sort, on the outside of the doorpost and the first panel of glass on the driver's side. So she's talking about the door window and then going back on the window of the van body itself. I started up the truck and let it warm up, allowing time for the glass to get warm and hopefully melt some of this crap. And I went back in the house. About 15 minutes later, I went back outside and commenced to scrape all of this slime off the glass, and I left. My thoughts were at the time that perhaps a black bear had been snooping around my van, knowing that they did live where I did as well. Let me flip this over here. At least several weeks later, according to my recollection, while I was outside grabbing some logs for the fire, I had the most uneasy feeling about me, the feeling like someone was watching me, there being nothing otherwise unusual about the day or my activities at the time. During the following days, I was constantly looking out the windows of my house, to the point where it was starting to bother me mentally. Mind you, I had never felt or been this way before, having lived there for some 6 years. It got to the point where I had someone I knew locally install several additional floodlights on the house's exterior to make me feel more comfortable at night. The house was now lit like a prison yard, and my utility bill had tripled. A couple of months later, during the tail end of winter, having just gotten out of bed and walked into the kitchen to brew some coffee, I noticed the same slimy snot frozen on the outside of this upper storm window in my living room. This time, there was what appeared to be part of a large handprint on the glass, part of which looked like actual fingers. I had a bear claw on my door years back, and I could hear it snorting. Then I exited my chair, walked over to the door, and shouted, "Git!" And I saw it running away out of my window. But bears do not have fingers. Based on what was on the glass, I could see that this snot had begun to run down from just below the top of the window, which put it somewhere between 6.5 and 7 feet. And frankly, I did not know what to think about it. That day, I went to my neighbor's property to run it by him and his wife, no longer willing to keep it to myself. Well, as you would imagine, they said it sounded like bear activity, which did not shock me, but I was hoping for something else. But what? I could not even answer that. Mind you, Bigfoot or even thoughts of Bigfoot were nowhere to be found in my mind. Fast forward to the latter part of the spring, when things were starting to liven up in the area. I was out in the yard picking up some branches and debris that had accumulated during the winter, just doing a general spring cleanup, when I heard a loud snap. causing me to spin around quickly, and it had come from behind me. My property in that direction was well inundated with trees and brush as I stood there scanning for an animal, seeing nothing. But there was that sense again of being watched. That shot the heck out of my relaxing cleanup, and I returned to the house. That afternoon, as I was sitting at my desk, a drafting table in the middle of my living room, I had my head down with a bright fluorescent lamp in front of me, and I swore something went by my window, causing me to look. It was just a flash, but enough to elicit a response from my body at the time. I picked up an iron from the fireplace hearth and slowly walked around the house, peeking left and right out each window. Do not ask me what I would have done with this iron shy of bashing a window out, but it made me feel a little more secure at the time just holding it. I saw nothing along the edges of the house, and nothing near or in the woods, and that was it, but not for long. A few weeks later, having just come back from shopping and brought the first bag of groceries into the house, leaving the sliding door of the van open with more bags inside, my phone rang, and it was my girlfriend from Ohio randomly calling me to say hello. There was nothing perishable in the van, so I stopped bringing the groceries in, chatting for about 20 minutes, and hung up the phone. Just as I opened the door to step out, I heard a crashing sound and something running into the woods. My van was parked in such a way that I had to walk out of my front door and around the side of my house to get to it, my driveway being dirt and ending right where a big pine tree was somewhat even with the front wall of my house, but on the side. I slammed the door shut and ran back inside, looking from my den window where I could see the van. I could not see and did not see the passenger side of the truck where the sliding door had been left open. I saw nothing, and having waited for quite some time, I eased out of the front door, walking around by the van. What I saw blew my mind. One of the grocery bags was broken open, about 10 feet from the truck. Most of the groceries were strewn about the area going out towards the woods, and there were footprints in the dirt. The driveway was no longer frozen, now at that thawing stage where my van's tires left impressions in the dirt as well. And this is where I saw large human-like feet and toe prints. Some were perfect, and I ran in and called the police. When the officer arrived, I left everything in the yard as I just described it to you, Bill, for him to see. And he was out of his mind, shocked. Additionally, I filled him in on almost everything I have also told you, Bill. He looked around, walked over to the woods, and returned to me saying, "Miss, I think you have a Bigfoot around your property." I was shocked. We spoke for about 30 minutes, during which he said that although it is not commonplace, people do and have had sightings and even run-ins with them as you have. He said, we either must learn to live with them or move on, and he left. I was not poor then, and I had bought this place at a meager price by my standards. 2 weeks later, I had given the house to a realtor and hired a moving company to pack up my home, and I left. The moving company held my furniture in storage while I shopped for a place in New Jersey, where I still live today. I would not have believed it had someone else told me what I just told you. But that is, in fact, the truth of the matter. Bigfoot creatures live in Maine, and who knows where else they may be. What do you make of that, Kev?
Man, that's wild, Bill.
Slime on the window, snot.
Or as a former Labrador owner, I would call it snarf.
Snarf.
Very hard to clean off, even
Yeah.
with the best Windex available.
Yeah, just really crazy, man. Yeah, you know, I don't know what to make of that, but it's just nasty business, you know.
Agree.
But what do you say? You want to go for another?
Well, I think, I don't know. What do you got? You got a short one or a long one?
Yeah, it's kind of short, but it's interesting.
All right, let's go, man.
Now, this sighting was shared with me by Steve Stransky, a resident of your home state, Kev, North Carolina.
Oh.
A good friend had invited me to the dove hunt opener in Virginia. I knew this fellow through work, the two of us being co-workers in the sales force. He lived in Virginia, knowing a gentleman who owned a big farm in the Shenandoah Valley area that opened up his farm for the hunt, inviting many locals to join in. The two of us had taken a week off at the same time to accommodate going hunting and spending some time together. I had never done shotgun shooting before, especially shooting birds in flight. So he had arranged for a day of lessons at this other man's property to assist me in getting familiar with the techniques. We were now back at his home, Dan being the kind of guy who makes his shells, melting the lead, and even creating the shot. He had all the tools and equipment to do so, located under an overhang attached to a large outbuilding on his property. 2 days before the dove shooting opener, we were on the property shooting, as he called them, street pigeons, before taking on the doves 2 days later. The farm was pretty well turned over at that point, with some stands of sunflowers and corn left in place, providing food for the pigeons and the doves, giving them a reason to be there in numbers to hunt them. Well, the day had arrived, and quite a few fellows had come in their trucks, all enjoying a meet and greet as though we had known each other for years. Before the hunt, the farm's owner did a safety walkthrough with us, coaching everyone that we should always see the sky under our barrels before pulling the trigger, which was, in fact, good advice. Well, the day had ended, with Dan and I being the only two guys left, now sitting on the tailgate of his pickup, chatting it up about how great the day had turned out and how cool it was that we had planned this time together. A very memorable moment in our lives. It was late in the day now. The sun had just dipped below the trees. The farm, which only an hour earlier was filled with shots fired and men walking all over the place picking up birds, and one dog running around retrieving others that had made their way into the trees and brush. We were sitting on a dirt road that flanked one side of this farmstead, overlooking the farm, the house, and silo in the distance, many acres in front of us. And with, as I said, these various stands of dead stalks that we had just been hunting in during the day's shoot. Everything was very still and serene. Not a soul was left walking the field. We were just about to wrap up our conversation when Dan said, "Who's that guy over there?" Now, we saw some man, or we thought it was a man, dressed in black, walking along the tree line at the far end of the field, more than likely 500 yards or more away from us. I'm talking, Bill, head to toe in black, including what would have been a hood. It was not that cold. I had a shirt and a T-shirt under it, and no hat on my head. Dan was pretty much wearing the same things himself. We knew it was not the owner because we had seen what he wore during the day. He was hunting with us. Dan had a pair of field glasses in the truck, retrieving them as we now watched this guy more closely. Dan was the first to set the binoculars on him, immediately saying, "I can't believe what I'm seeing. It's a Bigfoot." He passed the binoculars to me, and I now saw it myself. It was walking away from the tree line along a stand of old corn, left for feeding the birds, with corn still in the ear. The corn was tall, even dead, more than a foot taller than myself during the hunt. And its Bigfoot standing alongside it was 2 feet taller than it. Right through the setting of the sun's completion, the day now turning to nightfall, we sat and watched as this creature remained to pick through the corn, hand to mouth eating the corn in the field, with nobody except the two of us knowing it was there. Dan called the farmer the next day, putting him on speakerphone as I stood beside him. Dan went over everything that had transpired with him, basically everything I just told you, Bill. And he was stunned, to say the least, listening to what was said. He did say that stories had abounded in the region about these Bigfoot being around, with himself and others just chalking it up to nonsensical conversation. Still, excuse me, he was not going to argue with Dave, knowing him to be a real stand-up guy. I could not believe what we had seen, yet it was undeniable. There could be no man dressed in black, 9 feet tall, and eating old corn in this field or any other field. We saw a giant beast covered in black fur, taking advantage of what was available just like the birds were. Even when I first saw it at a distance, something did not seem right about its movements, slow and lumbering, with a strange posture and arm swing. Not at all looking like an average human, because it was not a human at all.
Wow.
Pretty wild, right?
Really wild.
You know, like I always said.
Did he say what part of North Carolina he was in?
Well, let me go back here again.
Yeah.
Is the Shenandoah Valley.
Okay.
And
yeah, that's a creepy spot.
Yeah, this guy had a farmstead in the Shenandoah Valley, and they had come from Virginia. Now, wait a second here. A good friend had invited me to the dove hunt opener in Virginia.
Okay.
So Stephen was a resident of North Carolina, but
he was up in Virginia.
He was at the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia.
Okay.
That's what was going on there.
Cool.
But, like I said, Kev, people see something because they're looking.
Yeah, they don't have that phone in front of them like the people today.
Right. They're sitting on the tailgate of a pickup truck on a dirt road alongside of a giant farm, just reminiscing about how cool the day was as the sun's setting, and this thing appears when everybody else was gone. So, was it watching them shooting, or had it just randomly walked over there after this hunt had ended with shotgun blasts and a dog running around?
By the way, on the lighter side, but still important, I love that tip of, always make sure that the sky is below your barrel before you fire.
Yeah, because then you're not going to hit somebody's head.
Exactly.
And
I like it. It's a good tip while you're there shooting shotguns.
Yeah, and also if you're line shooting in a field, you're not supposed to go beyond like 45 degrees. In other words, you only move to your left shoulder, your right, just beyond it. If it's out of that zone.
Oh, I see what you mean. 45 degrees off dead center.
Right, off looking forward, like your nose.
Don't shoot left and blow your friend's head off.
No, you leave it to the next guy to catch up with it.
Yeah.
That's the way it works. And it doesn't matter where you are in the line. At the outer edge, obviously, you have full swing left or right.
Yeah, but you still shouldn't in case somebody's standing there.
That's correct.
Not supposed to be there, right?
That's correct. It's just,
I get it.
It's just a rule, just like seeing.
Good tip, though.
Yeah, like seeing.
And a double creature feature tonight, Bill.
Yeah, well, I try to swing them in when I can. Because I know that people like to hear these accounts, and I like to. I obviously I wrote about them, so I like to hear about them myself.
You're a big fan of bringing the creep.
Yeah, well, I love the creep,
especially the 8-foot hairy man.
Speaking of the creep, I'm working on TNT by AC/DC.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You're playing it on your guitar?
Yeah.
Nice.
And I'm also working on one of your favorites that I told you about, Hey, Hey, What Can I Do?
Oh, yeah.
Led Zepp.
Little Zepp.
Yeah.
Maybe a little Ocean for me.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
There's a lot of stuff to work on. And the cool thing is it all contributes to practice time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Little by little, you gain your chops and you get better
Well,
and
you got to
better.
play something that you like, this way you keep working on it.
Yeah, well, why not play something you don't like?
Well, then you don't work on it.
I'll work on it.
Plus, if you set the bar that you got to emulate Jimmy Page, hey,
Well, that's some bar to set, man.
you're setting the bar. No one's going to criticize you for not aiming high enough. Just saying.
Oh, my God.
Awesome.
How about the Immigrant Song?
Oh, that's a good one too, man. It's
All right.
a good one. They're all good, man. They're
Yeah.
all good. Can't find a bad one there.
What do we have in our... Well, I'll tell you, before we switch, my next song is probably going to be Houses That Are Holy.
Oh, yeah.
And, I try to find stuff I could have a little fun with on my own. Because I got nobody around me, but I'll turn the amp up and rock it,
Yeah.
So, anyways,
Awesome.
what do we got in our listener mail, brother?
Yeah, we are going up to our friend Jane in New Hampshire, being you were in Maine for one of these accounts.
Yeah, hello, Jane. Love you.
I love this one. So Jane is looking at Zillow.com, which I look at all the time, Jane. Mm-hmm. And she said a reader sent a listing, and in the property listing, it's basically a big lot. You can spot a Bigfoot-like figure lurking in the background. So, she thinks it's a hoax, of course, but, she writes in all caps, hilarious with an exclamation point. And I agree, Jane, that is hilarious. I've looked at a lot of Zillow ads, including for lots, and I haven't seen one with a Bigfoot lurking in the background, so I love it.
Yeah, Jane's a really fantastic lady. And obviously with a good sense of humor.
100%. Cool. And then we got a couple of very nice fan letters, Bill, that I'm going to cover, which, reminds us that you are trying to sell some books. So CJ writes in, and he says, I have all 12 books. And he says, do the brand new books have new stories, or are they just 12 books put into regions? I hope they're selling well for you. I love the podcast, and I've listened to every single one. And CJ, I'll answer this for my brother. We have covered it, but I'm not mad at you or anything. But the new regional books actually have the stories from the other books, but they're put into the region. So if you're a fan of the Northwest and you want to read about the Northwest, they're all there together, which is kind of handy.
Yeah. Now, and that's why I did it, because the request was there from people like, what's going on in Colorado? I had that teacher a while ago, was taking his kids out for a field trip doing a little Bigfoot thing from school, if you can believe it.
Oh, yeah.
And he wanted to know what was going on in that state.
Yeah.
And it just so happened when he contacted me, I was organizing this book, and with the help of our intrepid reporter, Rick from Ohio, I had all of Colorado listed. And I told him the names of the encounters and the books that they were in. And then I told him, it's up to you whether you want to get them or not, that you could read them and find out more information. But I knew everything that I had that was in Colorado.
Super cool.
So it's cool, Kev, right? I mean, like, if you want to know what's going on, what's been seen in New York, they're in the Northeast edition. New York, Maine, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Vermont, all in there. Southeast. Southwest, I have a central book we're working on. There'll be a Northwest book, not to be confused with the Pacific Northwest, and then Canada. So,
Nice.
yeah, no, it's interesting, and I'm glad I did it. We're working on finishing it. Obviously it takes a long time and a lot of money and everything else. So,
Yeah, and I'm waiting for my autographed copy, which I expect will be under the Christmas tree this year. Hint, hint.
well, I guess it'll be under your tree if somebody else autographs it and buys it for you.
Oh, man. Feels like Charlie Brown. All I got was a rock.
You're lucky you got a rock.
All right, Bill. And our last email comes in from Michael, and Michael says, WJ, on one of your last episodes, you said that you lost more than 50 pounds. I'm guessing you didn't cut your legs off or something. He didn't actually add that part.
Yeah.
Any pointers you could share with the rest of us and again, I'm adding this because we're all trying to lose some weight, of course, especially this time of the year.
What's his name?
Michael.
Well, Michael, if you want to lose 75 pounds of ugly fat quick, chop your head off.
Whoa.
No.
Michael, he's not very nice this time of the day.
But, from a physiological point of view, if you just cut back on simple carbs like white breads, sugar, and I'm not saying alleviate them, but the more you do, the more effective what I'm going to be. The more effective what I'm going to tell you is going to be. Your body needs a certain amount of sugar, and it will go to your fatty stores to break them down if you deny it intake. If you get that fireball running, if you just alleviate sugar and white flour products from your diet, you will see an increased loss like you never thought possible. You add to that a little bit of exercise, and you're going to see spectacular results. The other thing is, and I've never been to Weight Watchers, but I understand one of their principles is to cut back on your portions. Now, nobody's going to do that for you, and believe me when I tell you I like to eat. But I'm training myself to eat smaller amounts of what I like to eat. And if I have to stuff my face once in a while with 3 or 4 donuts, I do.
Yeah.
Just as like a kick. But I'll tell you this, Kev, when I have those days when I go down and buy a bunch of donuts for the crew and we have at it, the very next day I get on the scale and there's like 1.5 pounds on me from that one event. So if you keep jamming your face with this stuff, what are you going to expect? You're going to put on pounds.
Yeah, and I'll add, Bill, because I've lost weight over time, but I'm always fighting to keep it off. Because as I tell people, folks, if you meet me, I'm like part Viking. So my natural weight is like 400 pounds. And of course, I've never been at 400 pounds, but if I ate everything in sight and didn't do anything, I think I would weigh 400 pounds. and I think the real secret, though, is although I'm a runner and that, a Clydesdale runner, as they call them, it's really what you put in your mouth more than anything else.
Yeah.
You're not going to exercise your way to weight loss. You have to eat less. And like my brother says, it's not just eating less, but eating less and eating some, not all, of the right stuff. I work with a dietitian. I'm fortunate enough my insurance company covers it as part of my benefit. And it's funny, Bill, I never told you this, but she says, Kev, we're shooting for like a B-, which is really good advice, though. She's like, don't think you're going to be perfect. We're shooting for a B-, which gets to your point about having a donut once in a while and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do indulge.
Well, whatever you do, it has to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just going to gain it all back.
Yeah, and you drive yourself crazy if you deny yourself everything.
Yeah, and I find, and I'll be quiet, like one of the biggest challenges I face is what they call scale anxiety.
Uh-huh.
If I'm not getting on the scale on a regular basis, then I'm like nervous about getting on the scale. because of how much I might weigh, and that's the worst problem ever. Because no matter what you do, you're not going to gain 5 pounds in a week or anything like that. So when you see yourself go up a couple of pounds, then you're aware of it and start working on it. It's a lot easier to lose a couple of pounds than it is to lose 25 pounds.
That's right. And I hit a number of roadblocks. They were like tiers. I dropped like
plateaus.
Right.
Plateaus.
I
That's
dropped
normal.
like 6 or 7 pounds, and then I was like frozen for a month. And then I'd drop a pound and put 2 back on. But if you keep fighting and you keep being mindful of what you're doing, you will get there. But
Absolutely. And by the way, you mentioned Weight Watchers. I've done Weight Watchers and have had great success with it. They have the points system, so you're not weighing everything, counting everything, but they have points assigned to certain foods. And it gives you a simple feel for what you're eating, and it makes you do this journaling. So in their system, you can do it on your phone. Like, hey, I had 2 eggs. Well, eggs, a boiled egg is 0 points. So
Right.
it's like free food.
Yeah.
On your schedule.
That's right.
Then you had a Big Mac. Well, that's like 30 points, and you're allowed 32. So you can eat it, but you're not going to do well on your budget for the rest of the day.
yeah, and alcohol, too much alcohol is taboo because alcohol is loaded with pure sugar.
Yeah, and it slows down your metabolism.
That's right.
Makes you sleep not
That's
well.
right.
So we should do a podcast on diet, Bill.
I don't think so.
Okay. All right.
Look at Bigfoot.
And
Are
that's
they
why
dieting?
Bigfoots are so trim, right? They only eat like raw deer and stuff like that.
And an occasional human limb.
Well, yeah. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for your kind 5-star reviews. And that's a good podcast, Bill. And if you're heading into Thanksgiving, travel safely. Enjoy your time with your friends. If you're fortunate enough to spend it with your family, enjoy your time with your family. And even if you're by yourself, hey, read a good book, have a turkey leg, and chill out, man.
I hear that, brother. And Kev, happy Thanksgiving to you and the crew.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And to all the friends of our podcast, we wish you and your families a happy and healthy Thanksgiving. And remember, if you happen to be hiking around the woods in Maine or the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, remember one thing, my friends. Always carry more gun than you think you're going to need. Sleep tight.